Hi, and welcome to the Thai Law Forum. Today I'm on the line with Claire Robinson, who is the editor at GM Watch and the research director with the food sustainability nonprofit Earth Open Source. And today we'll be talking about genetically modified organisms, otherwise known as GMOs. So Claire, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, great. Well, we're going to get right into it. And first of all, if you wouldn't mind just explaining to us what exactly are GMOs and why this is such a big topic in the news right now?
Yes, genetically modified foods are foods that have been produced by a laboratory technique called genetic engineering. And with conventional crossbreeding of crops, you can crossbreed very closely related plants. You can breed wheat with wheat to make a better wheat. Genetic engineering is totally different from that. You can take the genetic material of any species and put it into a completely different species. So you can take the DNA of insects or bacteria and insert that into your crop. And supposedly, the genetic engineers tell us that it makes better crops, but actually the only two traits that are widely available on the market are herbicide tolerance, to make the crop tolerant to herbicides, so you can spray as much herbicide as you like on the crop and it doesn't die, and also insecticidal crops that actually make their own insecticide from inside the plant, and that's supposed to protect the plant from pests, but actually there have been numerous problems with both these types of GM crops. At the moment there's a big news story about a new study that's come out showing that rats fed GM maize, which is already in our food and feed supply. These rats were fed GM maize over a period of 2 years, and they developed really serious, huge tumours, very fast-growing tumours. And also they had kidney and liver pathology, and also premature death, increased mortality. So this is a very serious study. As was predicted, it's come under huge attack from the GMO lobby. But the study is fine. There's nothing wrong with the study. It's one of the very few lifetime studies that test the effects of eating a GM food over the animal's lifetime. So that's why it's important.
Okay, yeah, it's very interesting. And so what about humans, though? What are the potential risks for humans, or has that even been put into a study yet? How do you go about that?
There are very few studies of the effects of GMOs on humans, and really no studies that show the effects of consuming these foods over a lifetime. They've done very limited tests, and the results of those have been worrying. It was found that genetic material from eating a GM crop actually does transfer to gut bacteria, and potentially that could be quite serious. There are various biological implications for that. Things like antibiotic resistance, because there are antibiotic resistant genes in many GM crops. So that is a concern. But really, what we're looking at with the rat study, rats have been long accepted as an equivalent to humans. They're accepted in medicine research and toxicological research, because we know that what happens to a rat is likely happening to human beings who are exposed to that substance. So this study on rats is very worrying, and we should be thinking about effects like tumours, even premature death, kidney and liver disease particularly. This seems to be a very common side effect with eating GMOs in laboratory animal studies, and also effects on the immune system. That's another thing that's been found in a lot of these studies.
Okay. And then what about foreign trade? Because a lot of the produce with GMOs in them are being shipped to other countries. Are there any regulations on this that's going on that could potentially keep people a little bit safer?
It's a very mixed situation. There's a patchwork of regulations. Really, a government is asked to approve a GMO for import, And they are supposed to do a safety assessment and say, okay, this is safe, we think, to put into the food and feed supply. And different countries have varying levels of strictness on these regulations. Really, the US government, which is the source of a huge amount of GMOs, North America, they really don't regulate GMOs much at all. There's no mandatory safety tests done on them. Some governments, the EU countries, there is a so-called regulatory system, but it is extremely weak, and we see that because this particular GM maize that was fed to these rats and created these terrible health effects. This maize has actually been approved in Europe for several years. We've been feeding it to people and to livestock. So really, the regulatory system is terrible. It is designed to allow these crops onto the market, basically because that's what a lot of big companies like Monssanto and Syngenta and Dow, the companies that develop these GMOs, that's what they want, and they have a lot of power.
Okay. And for, talking about putting, per se, labeling GMOs on certain produce, for example, here in Thailand, it is required to have a label, but then again, as long as it's over 5%. And so what's your opinion on that, saying, well, as long as only as long as there's a small amount of GMO, then we're okay, we'll still let it go in the market. What's your opinion on that?
It's very, very worrying. Really, it is good to have labeling. So Thailand has labeling, that is a good thing, because if people are told about GMO content, the more research that gets done, the more against GMOs consumers become, and the more determined the food companies become to get these things out of the food and feed supply. So labeling is very good, and at the moment there's a big push from citizens in America trying to get labeling, and if America gets labeling, that could be a real turning point for them. But really, the question of how dangerous the very small amounts of things over time is a very complex question, because you can say there's a plastics chemical called bisphenol A, and scientists have been finding out that very, very tiny amounts of this stuff is actually very dangerous. And similarly, the herbicide that is used with this particular GM maize that was tested on rats recently, they found that tiny amounts of this herbicide that are less than the amount that's allowed in drinking water in the EU actually creates these effects, these tumours and kidney and liver disease and so forth. So we can't really say, well, if we have a tiny amount, we're certain it's safe, because that really isn't true.
Some of these large companies that are using the GMOs, are they monopolizing the market and making pretty much a block, saying, no, we're not going to change things?
Yeah, that's a major problem. Consolidation in the seed industry, and this is a worldwide problem. Monssanto for many years has been buying up small seed firms, and some of the other big GM companies like Syngenta, the same thing, they've been buying up smaller seed companies. So we're now in a situation where an awful lot of seed, in some countries it's as much as 80–90% of seed is owned by just a few companies. And these companies have put all their eggs into one basket. That's to say, we have England. Really means that they've gone down the GM seed route, sold with herbicides and pesticides that those seeds depend on in order to survive and grow. This is their business model. So in some countries that have adopted the GM crop system, they find that actually the farmers are unable to buy non-GM seed anymore. This has certainly happened in India with cotton. It's also happened in Brazil with soy. A couple of years ago, Monssanto actually brought in a rule called the 85-15 rule, which meant that farmers could only buy 80% GMOs and just 15% non-GM seed. So progressively they are withdrawing non-GM seed from the market, even though the non-GM seed performs better often. It yields better, it's more resistant to disease and to weather changes like drought. So in the case that these GM seeds are better and farmers prefer them, that really isn't the case. We've ended up with a highly monopolised seed market, and encourage all your listeners to do whatever they can to preserve the non-GM seeds. Don't just store them, grow them in your garden or wherever you can.
What about the argument of people saying that, well, we've got such a high demand, we have to use GMOs, we have to get this produce out there, and this is the best way possible? How do you go around that?
One aspect that they constantly talk about is the number of people in the world that we need to feed. That's a very important factor, but the fact is that GM crops actually don't yield better, and they don't resist disease better, and they don't tolerate extreme weather conditions better. So if we're thinking about feeding the world in a few years' time, or even now, GM way to go, and this was agreed upon by a very major report that came out in 2008, which was endorsed by, I think, over 50 countries worldwide, and it was authored by 400 agricultural experts, and they all agreed that GM crops were not the way to go to feed the world, and that we had to focus on agroecological techniques, which were genuinely sustainable. Breeding, because these methods have served us extremely well. There's no shortage of food in the world at the moment. We produce enough to feed the world 1.5 times over. The problem with food is actually distribution and poverty. People are too poor to buy in poorer countries, and political problems, economic problems, and GM crops are really irrelevant to that particular argument.
What about the organizations you work for? What are you specifically doing in this area?
I work for GM Watch, which is a citizens information service that puts out news about GMOs. It's free to sign up to our newsletters, and you can sign up at the website, that's gmwatch.org. And I'm also research director at Earth Open Source, and we have a website, earthopensource.org, and we focus on the scientific research side of genetically modified crops, and we brought out a few fairly hard-hitting reports on the dangers of GMOs. There's all the scientific research that you could ever possibly need in a report called GMO Myths and Truths, which we brought out a couple of months ago, and it's had quite a big impact worldwide. Because what the pro-GM people are always on about is there's no big research.
Oh, that's fine.
That's true, there's lots of it, and it's all in that report.
Okay, wonderful. And one final question, where do you think this is going? Is this going to escalate, or do you think that there's going to be enough protests and outrage over this, and that companies are going to eventually have to stop producing these GMO products?
Unfortunately, with the latest study that's come out, the authorities in many countries have just replied with denial, saying there's no problem with GMOs, the study is somehow flawed, it used too few rats, etc., it used the wrong type of rat. This study was the most in-depth study probably ever on GMOs, and it was a far better study than the ones that the Bio does to gain approval of its products. So at the moment, the authorities and the industry are really in denial and hoping that the whole fuss will go away and die down. They don't take these dangers on board. More research will just come out, as it has been doing over the past decade or so, showing more and more risks with GM crops, and by then we'll be in a serious situation where, our food supply will be heavily compromised. So we're saying don't wait for that to happen. Let's just get it out of the food supply right now, and we can start now. whatever we ask them to grow. That's not a problem. As long as they have access to the seed, they will grow consumer wants. So that's what we have to push for.